I did not expect to get emotional saying this.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm not okay.
Oh my gosh. I forgot how good we sound. I honestly forgot how sexy we sound in this setup.
The thing is...
Oh my gosh. That was sexy, babe.
I didn't say a single word. You just love how you sound in this.
I don't really care how I sound. What's funny is when you don't do it for a minute and then you go back in and you listen to like crispy audio again. You're like, oh, I forgot how high quality and HQ this is.
Sure.
Another day, another vlog, everyone.
Another vlog.
Welcome back. Even though this isn't a vlog, we're back in the podcast setup. You guys requested it.
It's another plug. Isn't that what we called it last time? Another plug.
That's hilarious. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are about to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary.
This is true. Good job.
And 5 years is a big accomplishment or like a big milestone to hit. So we thought that we would share some things that we wish we knew before getting married. I had my own thoughts, but then I wanted to research a little bit.
Also, like when you like think about like what are things that you would advice that you would give on the subject, if you do a little research, it'll like spark different thoughts about what you read.
So we both have different lists, and I feel like we can just
get a little nice back and forth
conversation.
Yeah, just a little give and take, you know, just like marriage. Now, guys, if you want to ask questions yourselves, let us know, because we could do a follow-up video to this, specifically answering your questions on the subject. But this is our list. This is our questions to each other.
Yes.
Okay.
My first one is kind of simple.
Yeah.
It's not easy. You aren't always going to feel like you're on your honeymoon.
That's true. I mean, it makes sense though, especially like leading up to a wedding. There's so much like hype and you have all these feelings and emotions that are so elevated. And then, you have your honeymoon or whatever, and the come down after a while and life sets in as it's going to be. It can get pretty mundane if you let it. I guess you just have to be really conscious of making an effort to choose to love the other person rather than just like let the feelings of love be there, because your emotions
will fail you.
Yes, can be up or down or whatever. And if you gauge the way you act just based off your emotions, that is very dangerous, where you have to actually know, like, even though I don't feel like doing this thing or feel like loving that person, I'm going to love that person. Anyway, that's my elaboration on your point, even though, do you have any advice on your own point?
I was going to say, I think for us, dating and engaged and married all in the same year, I would say when we were married, we were still in that honeymoon phase. Obviously, you get in a honeymoon phase once you get married, but we were still on this like high of dating each other and getting engaged, and it all kind of happened so quickly that there was this constant like high honeymoon phase
for a long time.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that it's boring now, but I can tell that like honeymoon phase has gone.
So this is a topic of conversation. Is the honeymoon phase real? Because there's people like who optimistically say the honeymoon phase isn't a thing because it should be a thing all the time. And like theoretically, yeah, it should be, but life is life. And that's clearly like people say the honeymoon phase because everyone experiences that sort of like high at the beginning of a relationship. And then as real life sets in, it starts to level out and you get comfortable. And it's kind of like, what are you doing? That's the important part, right? After that like initial high of just like elevated feelings and attraction and everything, the come down of that, the way you act after that is what's going to determine the longevity of your relationship.
I would say we are both still incredibly in love with each other. Like the feeling of being in love hasn't gone away for me at all, but
Really?
My thought around this is that since we were on such a high the whole time of our like relationship, engagement, marriage, we were moving and everything was happening, I didn't have the expectation that that would happen forever, but it's not always going to be like that. And there are going to be like arguments. There are going to be times where you're like just not on that like high, This is one that I found interesting. I found this one on an article when I was doing research, but you're actually marrying the whole family, which is very true. Not that that was one thing that we didn't overlook, but specifically, I guess, because things were moving fast and I wouldn't change anything, but I wish we understood how difficult it was going to be with having your family on one side of the world and my family on the other, and what that relationship actually is now. I don't think we thought about that enough, because at the time of us dating, we were just traveling all the time. So I did come here and hang out with your family, and then you came to hang out with my family. And
we also were way more optimistic though about what our travel situation would look like, because our marriage was 2.5 years of not being able to travel, 6 months of finally being able to travel, and then COVID hit, and then not being able to travel again. And even still, traveling to Australia is so difficult. So we've kind of had a tough run at it as a whole, but I feel like with time that will get easier with us being able to travel and everything.
I felt like that came up a lot, was like you are marrying the family. And one piece of advice that I read was it's not just going to be you two, and to make sure that you are spending time with the families to like get to know them and get close with them if you have like a good relationship with them, because you're entering into a new family.
Yep.
This one is probably an obvious one, and not really something that actually we are still going through it a little bit.
What is it? I'm curious now.
Just make sure that you're aligned. Like, kind of obvious example is like, what if you get engaged and you're getting married to someone and you really want to have kids, but you haven't had that conversation and they don't want to have kids, and you get married and then you're ready to like try for kids and they're like, I don't want to have kids. You want to make sure you're aligned on your values, on the really make or break things in a relationship.
Yeah, basically all the things that build the vision for your family and where your family's going and what that's going to look like long term. Like if your vision for your family is to have a lot of kids, if you're with someone who doesn't want to have kids, you're heading in different directions with like your life trajectory and what you want for your life.
This isn't one that like related to us. I will get to the one that relates to us in a second. Another one could be if you are two different religions and then you have kids, that's also a conversation of like, what do the kids do? Like, do they go to your church or their church? Or, you know, it's like, there's so many different examples, but I feel like what we didn't fully figure out before we got married is like,
what nationality do we want our kids to be?
No.
Are they going to be Australian or are they going to be American?
It is on that though. It's like, where are we going to end up? Where are we going to live? You are obviously from here. I'm obviously from Australia. That's like been the hardest thing in our marriage, is like wanting to be in those two different places.
This one's so important and it's like straightforward. This one we knew though, but I'm just going to say it in case, you know, people need to hear it. Be on the same page financially with each other.
That was one of my notes.
Was it? Oh my gosh. This wasn't something we wish we knew before marriage, because I feel like we were on the same page with finances before we got married and stuff. But it is so important. I think it's like the second most common reason that people get divorced.
I thought it was the top reason.
Or the top reason. I don't know.
It's very common.
If you get married to someone and then like all of a sudden after the wedding, you guys are like working on, you know, your finances and bringing your assets together. If all of a sudden the person's like, oh yeah, by the way, I have like $200,000 in debt. That is going to be a flippin' struggle. The things in your life before the marriage and the baggage and the things that you kind of have to deal with. Baggage could be emotional, relational stuff, or stuff like finances or whatever, just like life things. You're bringing that into the marriage and throwing that onto the other person, whether it's good or bad. Like the other person is going to have to deal with the things that you're bringing into that relationship. So you need to be on the same page before you get married. And finances is super important because it can be a really stressful topic.
You're talking about being very open about it, but being on the same page is also like, say if I really wanted to budget every month and you didn't care to budget every month, that's going to cause some issues.
It's like having the same goals and the same vision for your family. And if your vision is we want to have our house paid off by this amount of time and have no debt by this amount of time, and how are we going to work towards that? Having that same vision is really important. So instead of like one person working on something and trying to move down the path fast and the other person like doesn't really care and isn't making any progress, you guys are linked arm in arm, side by side, making progress together. We purposefully, before we got married, sat down and made those goals and made a plan on how to like get to marriage and get the wedding done and move Jess to the US and all of those things without getting into debt.
Everyone knows how important communication is. It's something that people continuously learn. I don't think we're at a stage where it's like, oh, we're great at communication.
Yeah.
You can continuously get better. If something is upsetting you or bothering you, talk about it rather than letting it build up inside and then kind of bursting into something bigger than it needed to be. I'm like thinking of something very specific in the beginning of our marriage that I definitely was keeping like to myself, and it was building up, and then it became something like bigger than it needed to be. So something I wish I knew, and something that I'm still practicing, is just don't like hold stuff in and let it build up, but just like communicate how you're feeling.
Yeah, and honesty with your emotions. Communicate what you're feeling and what emotionally is weighing you down and what's kind of like there, rather than just communicating about, I don't know, the external things. We do it. We set time aside to make sure that every week we have a conversation of like where it's like an emotional check-in and where we're emotionally at. We come together and just speak to where our heart is and what we're feeling and what's going on inside of us. Because sometimes those conversations just don't happen unless you're intentional about making them happen.
This is something that I feel like we have both learnt the longer we have been together. For example, if Gabe is really hurt by something that I did or vice versa, him feeling that way isn't wrong. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Even if you don't agree with the person on like why they're upset about something,
accepting it as a fact of like, okay, this is his feeling right now, even though I don't agree.
Don't invalidate someone's feelings just because you don't agree with why they're feeling that way.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
All right, sick, bro.
But you worded it way cooler. That was good.
Thanks.
Put that up on the TikTok.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. You don't need to have a big wedding.
No.
Contrary to societal norms, you don't need to have a big wedding.
We talk about this a lot. Like, and any advice I could give to someone planning a wedding, unless you really do want a big wedding, it's about the marriage. It's not about the wedding day. I heard someone say, I think it was when I was researching for this actually, if you didn't get to have the wedding day, are you still going to be that excited to marry the person? Like, wedding day aside, you should really just be so excited to marry the person that you want to marry.
We love our wedding day. It was amazing, but it was also like, how special would it have been to just celebrate with like family and maybe like the few closest friends?
I loved our wedding and I loved everyone that was there. I wouldn't change anything because
I wouldn't change. I freaking loved our wedding.
Yeah.
But
if we were for some reason going to do it again.
Yeah. That would have just been such a special, intimate thing. And honestly, it would have allowed a lot of room for our families to spend more time with each other and get to know each other, just because that was basically the only time.
Yeah.
Other than like, I think maybe one other time that they actually got to be together.
If you want to have a big party, you could do that. Like, we had a reception here of a lot of family and friends after we got married. And I think that's fun too, like having a really intimate ceremony and then like just having a fun party.
And it was a completely different day. Just do a completely different day when you're done with your honeymoon or whatever. No pressure. You're going to go and just celebrate that you are now married with a bunch of people and have a fun party and everything like that.
At the end of the day, you're just trying to marry the person that you love. This is a quote I found. Be careful not to invest so much into the wedding and not enough into the marriage. Isn't that interesting?
Give it to me.
What? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I don't know what you were doing.
That's hot.
I thought that was so wise.
Yeah.
Just like, yes, it's a big, beautiful, special. It's like one of the best days of our lives ever. But don't invest so much into that you're not like focusing on the marriage.
Beautiful.
This is something very specific to us, but I feel like it could relate to a lot of other couples, especially since working from home became such a thing last year. I wish I knew, and I wish we both practiced it a little bit better, that since we have been working together pretty much since we very early on started dating, sometimes it's very easy to fall into a trap of where you're treating each other like co-workers. I find it most when we're going out for dinner or something and we're just talking about work. Then I'm like, whoa. I think that's something that I didn't expect to have so much in a marriage. And something that like I think we're trying to work on every day.
For us, I feel like we've definitely needed to create, because so much of our life not is consumed by work, but was consumed by work because we also didn't do things outside of work, if that makes sense. So many of our interests and so many of our hobbies we were able to turn into work that there wasn't a lot outside of work that we could just naturally talk about that we were interested in and whatnot. So I think we have over probably the past, 2 years maybe, have been really intentional about finding things and doing things specifically that are not work.
Paint by numbers.
F1.
I know.
So, this will be different for every couple, but learning how to, I don't want to say learning how to fight with each other, but learning how to resolve conflict with each other. Just the mindset is good to have. And I feel like I've said this before at some point, but you have to always realize if you are in some sort of conflict, it's not you versus the other person, but it's each other versus the situation. For us, for example, there's this kind of like lingering situation of, we already talked about it in this video, where we're going to live,
where we're going to end up, how does our future look like?
Yeah. all of that stuff. I feel like especially me, because I always felt like when Jess moved to the US and, you know, we got married and all that stuff, I was like, oh yeah, this is what our life is going to be like. And then her feelings of, hey, I miss Australia, I miss home, and me feeling kind of not like attacked, but thrown off guard a little bit.
I know what you're saying because we've gone through this so much. If I expressed how sad or how much I missed Australia, you would feel guilty.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, you wanted to marry me. Like, we wanted to move to LA together. Like, all that stuff. I was like, I thought this was what we wanted. And then I felt guilty. And coming to the realization of, it's not me versus her. It's us versus what our situation is, and we need to attack it together and know how to resolve that conflict without fighting. And a lot of it has to do with being proactive as well. Like understanding where the pain points are very early on so you can continually have that conversation over time and not let it escalate into a fight. And that goes back to what Jess was saying about not letting your emotions boil up and not say anything about them until the last minute and they explode.
I don't think we had a fight until after we were married. And so that technically is something I wish we knew. How were we going to argue with each other? Like we didn't know each other's fighting style. Big one. Do not stop going on dates when you get married.
Yeah, that's self-explanatory. That's so easy to not do.
Especially when you have kids, just please continue going on dates with each other. It's really important not to just like get used to being in the house. Like it's different going on an intentional date and spending time with each other.
Also, especially if you work together or work in the house together or always around each other, you could be spending a lot of time together, but not actually spending quality time together. And just really being intentional with not, I guess, getting those confused, that even if you're around each other and spending time together, spending quality time together, just the importance of that and making sure that you do it and carve out time in your schedule for that.
My last one is already making me teary thinking about it.
Really? Oh my gosh, you're like crying.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
You're almost crying.
My last one is to just... Oh my gosh, what the heck?
Are you good, babe? I don't even know what it is, and I'm like starting to tear up just watching you tear up.
It's just to... Why I did not expect to get emotional saying this is to cherish every moment.
Oh my gosh.
I have a big lump in my throat.
Do you?
Can you believe we've been married for 5 years next month? Like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, that is wild.
So, I'm not okay. Something I wish I knew was that time goes really fast. Try to slow down and like just try to like have slow moments and just cherish every moment that you can. All right, I'm fine.
Dang.
Sorry about that. I literally felt like I was 90 years old, like reflecting on my entire lifelong marriage.
Dude, are you kidding me? I get emotional just thinking like when we would travel around with Jacko and then all of the...
How does Jacko go?
Just all the moments that we had together with all of our friends. And it was just like so many of them were so special and like the moments we had together and stuff.
Well, it's like this is a marriage thing and I'm like, just cherish and you're like, times with Jacko.
You know what I mean? So
No,
much of our like early relationships he was around for.
Well, he is the reason that we're together.
He
Thanks,
is.
Jacko.
Thank you, Jacko.
Definitely. Thank you, Jacko.
Yes. Thanks, Jacko.
This was a good chat.
This was a good chat.
I felt like I needed that little teary moment.
I feel like you did too.
Love you guys. Hopefully this was helpful. And let us know if you want us to do the Q&A version of this where we can get more in depth with your questions.
Peace out.
From Jess
and Gabriel Conti. You!